You're listening to Binjang 91.5, and from Studio 2 we've got Matthew Dickerson and Tech Talk. G'day, Matthew.
Yeah, good morning, Tony. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting that.
Surely you've been thinking about this day for weeks and months, Tony.
Well, I have to be very honest with you. I've never watched Star Wars.
Yeah, right.
Well, wasn't that deflation?
Yes, look, I'm sorry, Tony, I've got to go now. It looks like this session's off.
Anyway, we should get into the first question, I think.
Sure.
That sounds so enthusiastic now. Now, using a smartwatch is popular with many people, but a lot of them complain about the same thing, which is how often they have to charge it. Now, is there a way we could turn body heat into electricity and solve this problem, do you think, Matthew?
I think there is probably a way, and some researchers are working on exactly that. There is such a thing called a thermoelectric generator, or a TEG for short, and it can convert body heat into electricity. And basically what it does is relies on two different temperatures. So, for example, putting something on your body, which is obviously fairly warm, and you're in a cold winter's day where the outside temperature might be cooler, the difference in that temperature allows electricity to be generated, which sounds fantastic. There's a bit of work to do yet, though, because normally a TEG is a stiff material, but some researchers have managed to come up with a material that's been moulded into some polyurethane, effectively giving you a wristband that allows it to generate electricity, again by that difference in temperature from the wristband wrapped around your wrist and the materials inside, and then the colder temperature on the outside of all of that. Now, it doesn't generate a huge amount of electricity, as you can imagine, but it may be enough to generate enough electricity to power your smartwatch. And that would be something that would be, I think, very popular with people, because people love the features of their smartwatch. They love all the advantages of the smartwatch and what it does, but you're really struggling to get through a day or maybe two with some smartwatches, and then you've got to charge it again. So you're used to having a watch that you can just leave on for months or maybe years in the past, but now you've got to charge it every couple of days. So they're not generating quite enough electricity yet to power a smartwatch. They will power an LED that might be linked to the wristband, so just a basic watch, for example. But again, this is the first iteration of this. This is the first example of it. I'm sure they'll keep working on it. And if nothing else, Tony, it might just extend how long before you have to charge. So rather than charging every day, you might have a smartwatch, in particular in warmer months, where you might have to just charge every week or so. And then in winter, it might go for 2 or 3 weeks, because that difference in temperature is the main way a TEG generates electricity.
Yeah, well, we can look forward to that. Now, I know, having listened to you on this program for a long time now, that you really lament the fact that Australia is lagging behind the rest of the world with the sale of electric cars. So, but one state is sending out some very confusing messages about that very issue, isn't it?
It is,
Victoria.
Indeed.
Who would have guessed?
What are you saying about Victorians? They're all confused, are you? I won't make any comment about Victorians. But I think the government...
I've just said it for you, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I think the government is a little bit confused. They are the first state in the nation to introduce a per kilometre tax, but now they're the first government in the country that are doing a subsidy for electric vehicle sales. So they're offering subsidies from this Sunday of $3,000 to help you buy an electric vehicle. And there's some rules around that. It's got to be below $69,000 and some certain conditions there. But in general, we see subsidies around the world, which does help EV ownership for different countries around the world. But this is the first state, the first area anywhere in this nation that's actually gone as far as saying they're going to be subsidies. They've got 20,000 subsidies to offer of that $3,000, which on current numbers will take a long time to actually take up. The entire state of Victoria only has about 7,000 electric vehicles. So at that rate, if they stay that same rate, that would take 3 years. But obviously the hope is that more and more electric vehicles will be taken up, and this 20,000 subsidies will go quite quickly. But there has been a little bit of criticism of the government because of that inconsistency for all those people that already own electric vehicles. Then supposedly from the 1st of July this year, if it still goes ahead, they'll be paying 2.5 cents per kilometre for driving their electric vehicles in the state. And there's still some argument about that. What happens if someone from Victoria with their car registered in Victoria goes for a trip to Queensland and racks up a couple of thousand kilometres on New South Wales and Queensland roads? Well, bad luck. They'll still be paying it because it's basically just done on the re-registration. The other part that's confusing is that hybrid vehicles will be paying 2 cents per kilometre. Now, the argument from the Victorian government is that electric vehicle owners are not contributing to a road tax as such, so they're having to charge them with a per kilometre rate. But people driving hybrid vehicles are still paying for petrol, so they are definitely being double taxed. And then you've got the argument from EV owners that if they're buying their electricity, they're paying GST on that, which goes into the revenue eventually for the state, and they've paid GST and possibly luxury car tax on the vehicle when they bought it. Given the fact that the fuel excise doesn't go directly into roads anymore and hasn't done for many decades, it's a bit of an argument that's not really got a lot of basis in actual fact. But anyway, it's good to see some government that's going to put its hand in its pocket and help people get on the electric vehicle ownership bandwagon.
Yes, well, I can see the arguments there quite clearly. And I think that might be a model that gets followed everywhere eventually. But anyway, now every object seems to be tagged smart these days. So what about smart glass? Is there a bright future ahead for that?
Oh, you're going with the puns this early in the morning, Tony. Yes, I think there is a bright future for some smart glass. There is such a thing as light modulation in a glass. And this particular glass that the researchers have come up with is a double glazed glass, which double glazing is fantastic for insulation. But in between the glazing, they put a noble gas, so something like argon or maybe even krypton, for example. And then they put a huge number of micro mirrors inside. And what happens is the glass effectively changes its properties depending on what's happening on the outside and what's happening with people inside. So, for example, on a cold day, the micro mirrors are readjusted so that you're trying to get as much heat into the actual building as possible, and those mirrors are readjusted automatically, so you're getting more and more sunlight coming in, natural lighting and also some heat. In the middle of a summer's day, those micro mirrors are readjusted and effectively they're reflecting that heat away or allowing a small amount of the light and heat to come through to naturally light the area that's inside, but then reflecting most of that heat away. Very clever. And again, there are lots of solutions coming out. We talked last week about a whiter than white paint. And so there are lots of solutions coming out to try and reduce our air conditioning costs. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. They're trying to talk about maybe 35% energy savings and maybe producing 30% less CO2 in the energy we'd have to produce to actually cool or heat a building. So I think in terms of high-rise buildings or buildings with lots of glass in them, huge amount of potential from a smart glass such as this with a huge range of micro mirrors inside. Again, experimental at this stage. You can't go down to your local glazier and buy this glass and put it in your house today, but it doesn't seem to take long from research, from prototyping to actually being in production.
Well, imagine combining that with EV or PV excuse me, energy collection systems. Now, I think they've actually talked about putting films on glass to collect sunlight converted into electricity. So it seems like endless what they can do with this sort of technology. Yeah,
that's right. And you're quite right there, Tony. I can see that you could have solar panels on a building, but having the micro mirrors reflecting the light that when they were reflecting away from the inside of a building, reflecting it back up to solar panels, for example. So huge range of potential options or alternatives to use this, but getting those micro mirrors and getting them to play the way they want to be played with is probably the secret to all of this, because there's this huge range of micro mirrors that need to basically stay inside the two layers of glass and do what they're meant to do, I suppose, is the critical thing there.
Yeah. And you'll be listening to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson on Binjang 91.5. Stick around this afternoon for our next session, and in the meantime, it's back to all the music and great information on Binjang 91.5.
We'll chat this afternoon, Tony.
Thanks, Matthew.